We all would like to thank you for having taken the time today to come out to listen to our concert. And our pianists have come from far, far away. They are in the Philippines and they're here for a tour, which is the 10th tour. Before I introduce the artists, I'd like to mention a few words about the Covington. We are a continuing care retirement community, which means that we provide service and care and help at all stages of needs. And you might start at the independent living, which is the building we're seated in right now. And then we have assisted living, and in the assisted living we have a dementia unit called the Courtyard. And next door is the skilled nursing. So we have everything under one roof. We're owned by the Episcopal Home Communities, which is affiliated with the Episcopal Church. But I'd like to point out that we're non-denominational and we're also non-profit. I'm going to take this very moment to say, please check your telephones, your beepers, your watches, and please turn them off so we don't have any disturbing noises. Thank you. During the intermission, we will have refreshments right outside the door, and you will also have an opportunity to talk to Bob, myself, or Carol, and of course we have brochures. And also, for those who didn't fill out the form with name and address, please do so you can be part of the raffle, which we will do right before the second part of the program. Our pianists have traveled far and performed in many different countries, and they made a program that sort of represents the global perspective that they have. We will hear Saint-Saëns, Chopin, and Mendelssohn. And after the intermission, we'll have Bueno Camino. Thank you, Ingrid. And also Santiago, masters from the Philippines, and then Tchaikovsky from Russia. It is an impressive story to read about the many places that Ingrid Sala Santamaria and Reynaldo Reyes have played in. Ingrid started as a young girl, and her mother, Pilar Sala, was her first piano teacher. After that, Juilliard in New York, back to Manila for a master's degree. And in 1978, she had her debut at the Orchestra in the Park in the Philippines. And after that, her career was launched. She was the premier soloist for the piano for many years. She has received innumerable awards from many different countries and from the Philippines. And not only that, but she's also an educator. And in 1991, she started a youth orchestra called the Cebu Youth Symphony Orchestra. And 10 years later, it had developed to become the National Orchestra of Southern Philippines. Besides all this, she's a mother of 4, and she has more than a dozen grandchildren. Reynaldo Reyes was born in the Philippines, but has lived in Maryland, US for many years, and is a professor of music at Towson University. He also performs, and he has certainly performed in both Europe, America, and in the Philippines and Asia. He's also both. He is both an educator and a performer. And I am aware that Reynaldo Reyes is also the mentor for Ingrid Sala Santamaria. Maligayan pagdating welcome. We applaud you for coming to the Covington today, and
Good afternoon. You're probably wondering why Ingrid and I are doing this all over the world, and mostly in Southeast Asia, and of course mostly in the Philippines. During my studies, of course, I discovered a lot of things that what classical music has been affecting, or the effect of classical music on individuals, unborn babies, children, students, and the elderly, the handicapped, the autistic children. We use a lot of music for all to help them. But we have been playing in the community, retirement communities, because of course the neurologists suggest that those, especially the elderly, should listen to concerts. In classical music, you can ask me that about that, how that works. But it works very, very well, and of course one of the purposes is for the elderly to listen to music so that if they have a tendency for Alzheimer's, it delays it. If you have no tendency, then it just keeps you alert all your life, and so you'll die of something else. Well, we have been doing this in the Philippines mostly, not so much for the elderly, but for students and for everybody else who are willing to listen, because we don't have such thing as music education in the way that you have here in the United States. In other words, for lack of money, we don't have a very strong music education, and so we have to be the one to travel to the Philippines to give them the music. They don't get it at schools. In the United States, you get it, not enough, but at least you get it. We don't get the same thing. They just sort of sing. And besides, most of the students and most parents don't understand what it is for. Well, it is definitely for the development of the brain, and there are so many statistics and there are so many tests going on, especially at the University of Wisconsin, describing the effects of classical music on students. But first, I think you're aware that pregnant women put the microphone in there to train the ears of the baby inside. They also do that when they are newly born so that they don't stay too long in the hospital. The baby becomes regular, their heartbeats are regularized immediately. And for students, for development of the development of their brain when they are very young. I'm not going to talk about that a lot. If you are interested, at the end you can ask more how that works. I'll just be talking about our music now. Now, we are going to be playing for you concertos. And first you have to know the meaning of concerto. The word concerto comes from the Latin word concertare. In Latin, concertare means to fight and to contend. But many centuries later, the same word concertare became Italian. In Italian, the meaning of concertare is to agree and to cooperate. So you see, it is a split personality, this word. And because it has split personality, when you hear a concerto, you will feel that very much. We feel like sometimes we are cooperating, we're agreeing, but many times you will hear we sound like we're fighting. That's exactly what a concerto is. It's fighting and at the same time agreeing. Like, for example, in the Philippines, we use a lot of this word concerto, but they mean cockfight. Because it is fighting, and they don't know that the word is correct. They just laugh when they say it because they're joking. Oh, if I have some friends, they say, I'm not going to a concert with music, it's a different kind of concerto. And they laugh because they're not sure, they only think that they are joking, but actually the use of the word is correct, like to play mahjong. In the Far East, mahjong is very popular, and to play mahjong they use the same word concerto because it's vying against somebody. Anyway, the first time this word came about was in the 1600s in Italy, specifically in Venice at the Church of St. Mark's Cathedral. If you have been there, you will notice that the church is divided into little nooks, naves, and each one of those naves during that time had a choir. And each of the choir, there are 4 choirs, and each of the choir will sing against each other. That style of singing was called concerto. But then 100 years later, it sort of disappeared, the idea of singing disappeared, and they started putting instruments into this concerto until it became more an instrumental piece rather than a singing competition. And Johann Sebastian Bach, a German composer, added what's called a soloist, meaning a solo performer, and there is an accompaniment by the orchestra. Today, that's what you're going to have. You will have a soloist, and I will be the orchestra, because we cannot afford to bring the orchestra. So anyway, I will just pretend to be an orchestra. And we're going to be playing concertos written between 1800 and 1900, and that's why we call this concert Romantic Concerto Journey. It's all the concertos written during the Romantic period of classical music, which is from 1800 to 1900. We also are going to give you a variety of composers so that you'll hear the different composers writing in the Romantic mode. A concerto is usually divided into 3 sections. The first section is called the first movement, the second section is called the second movement, and the third movement section is called the third movement. Usually the first movement is slow and fast, or fast. The second movement is definitely mostly slow, and the third movement is usually very fast. So the first that we're going to play is Saint-Saëns. It's fast enough, and we'll play his concerto in G minor, and it's going to be slow and fast. And then we will play Chopin, which is definitely a typical second movement, which is slow. Second movement of his concerto in E minor, and we will end the first part of the program with Mendelssohn's concerto in G minor, which is the third movement and also very rapid. So, without further ado, we'll start the program in Santa Maria.